joining us here at the Women's Caucus. We are so excited. There's so much good news, so much information to share, so many wonderful women to recognize, challenging justice on a daily basis on our behalf. I also want to recognize, honor our men that has joined us. I was so surprised to see on Facebook 20% of our followers are men. So we love you, men. The thing is, you didn't have to what to wear today. I chose white because that way I could represent our country, Ukraine, and I have my bead there for Mardi Gras. And so I'm all set. I hope you guys are excited. We're going to get the show rolling right away. And we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance from none other than Georgette Gomez. I apologize, Georgette, who is going to lead us today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. And thank you for asking me to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask everybody to please put your right hand up and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed doing the two favorites. At this time, I want to acknowledge relationships, faith, and place, old indigenous practice that flows into the future. The traditional territory of the tribe is where I was, as a step toward honoring the truth, the healing, and reconciliation. The Women's Caucus commits to open all public events and gatherings with a statement acknowledging the traditional native lands on which we stand. We therefore commit to move beyond words into programs and actions that fully embody a commitment to Indigenous rights and cultural equity. And at this time, I would ask for a moment of silence for Ukraine, our military soldiers and their military soldiers sworn to defend us, as well as their families. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. So now let me take a moment, and I see a lot of friends in the chat, so keep putting in where you're from. We're glad to see you, so we know you're here. Like I said, this is our month, our time to shine, ladies, so let's take advantage of every second. I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce my sisters on the executive board from around the state, and we're going to spotlight them one at a time. I'm going to start with my Vice Chair, Tisa Rodriguez, my Vice Chair, Monica Wilson, Recording Secretary, Susan Gutowski, Corresponding Secretary, Ida Naranya. I'm not sure if she's joined us or not, but our treasurer we're proud of is Becca Doughton. Christina Dixon, who's our Political Development Chair. Cess Rosales, who's always on the ball with our policy issues. And not sure because she's working back from South Africa, Dr. Fatima Gupta, Legislative Chair. We have Lori Gassini, I always messed that up, Lori Anzini, who is our connection to the State Women's Caucus. Megan Imperial, who is on board with us as from representing our liaison for CYD. We're proud of her and the work she's been doing. And we're also possibly having our boot camp chair, Crystal Ryu. So we're going to keep her in healing prayer. She wasn't feeling too well. And with that, this is the team that makes all of this happen, the wheels turn, and the action we continue to take. I'm ready to start our State of the Union photo. Am I missing that? Is that up?
Yep, we just missed that cue a little bit. Here we go.
Hello, California Democratic Party Women's Caucus. Thank you, Carolyn Fowler, for the invitation to speak with you today. It's a pleasure to be with you, however, virtually. As always, I bring you greetings from the House Democratic majority and accept every kindness and kind word extended to me on behalf of our courageous House Democrats. Because of all that you do in this courageous caucus, we were able to deliver for the American people in unprecedented fashion this past year. Before our last election in 2020, House Democrats laid out our agenda to meet the needs of the American people during the pandemic and beyond. We put shots in arms, money in pockets, got children back in school, and parents and others workers back to work safely. And we did this while saving our economy. We did so without one Republican vote. All that you have done made it possible not only because of your hard work to reach, register, and turn out voters, putting Democrats in positions to deliver on our promises, and we're not done yet. Because Democrats delivered for the people, America has had its fastest rate of economic growth in nearly 40 years. 6.6 million jobs were created under the leadership of President Biden, and unemployment has dropped from 6.2% to 3.9%, the largest drop ever in a single year. Democrats also delivered an historic bipartisan infrastructure law that created millions of good-paying union jobs that can't be outsourced. Every U.S. town and city, tribe, and municipality will benefit from cleaner water, safer roads and bridges, expanded mass transit and broadband, more supply chain capacity, and again, good-paying union jobs to restore and expand the middle class. When it became clear that COVID was hitting women and communities of color particularly hard, President Biden knew that mere recovery wasn't enough, nor was investing in roads and bridges enough. He insisted that we had to build back better with resilience for everyone. That means helping families with care obligations, paid leave, workplace protections, and treating caregivers with the dignity they have earned and the pay that they deserve. Building back better means we do so with equity, justice, and real opportunity for women, because when women succeed, America succeeds. Right now, we are continuing our work to support working families to try to resolve our supply chain issues and tackle cost on high monthly expenses, crushing family budgets. And we're committed to addressing the climate crisis with the urgency and investment that it requires. Our children deserve clean air, clean water, and a planet that sustains them. Republicans not only refuse to help, but they are standing in the way, whether it's on COVID, climate, or voting. Everything we value as Americans is at stake in the next election because Republicans have turned their backs not only on governing, but on democracy itself. From gun violence prevention to a woman's right to choose to the election itself, everything is on the ballot. With 400 bills aimed at blocking rightful voters from the ballot box, what Republican legislatures are doing across the country is a legislative continuation of what they did on January 6th. They tried to overturn the will of the voters, to undermine our democracy and the integrity of our elections, and to undermine the vote, which is at the heart of our democracy. They tried to burn it down, all down. We stopped them on January 6th, and we must stop them again, continue to stop them. President Biden said it best recently: you can't love your country only when you win. Democrats didn't ask for this fight, but we will fight this fight because America is worth it. Our democracy is worth it. Our children's future is worth it. Together, we will expand our House majority. We will keep the Senate. We will deliver fully on the president's agenda to build back better with women. And together we will celebrate the rise of an exceptional, brilliant, qualified, and principled Black woman as the newest justice on the Supreme Court, because it's about time. In fact, it's very long overdue. Thank you, California Democratic Party Women's Caucus, and thank you, Madam Chair Carolyn Fowler, for your extraordinary, outstanding leadership. Onward to victory. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. Did we get the photo yet? India?
You'd like a group photo?
No, the photo from last night. The photo
Which photo?
from the State of the Union.
I don't have that in my program.
Okay, I'm going to move it along. We'll come back to it at a break. At this time, it gives me great privilege to introduce the one person who must take charge of all these women, but more so the entire state of California, and leading us to victory in November. So it gives me great pleasure to recognize and have a few words from our chair of the Democratic Party here in California, Rusty Hicks.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to greet and welcome the Women's Caucus of the California Democratic Party this evening. And certainly thank you for your leadership and your phenomenal work on so many different fronts. I think Carolyn Fowler is the epitome of the phrase, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, because Chair Fowler is incredibly busy and serving not only the Women's Caucus, but so many other fronts in our party. So thank you for your leadership. Good evening, Women's Caucus. It's great to be here with you, and certainly want to welcome you to our 2022 state convention. Certainly had hoped that we would have the opportunity to be together in person, but we're here virtually. And that's the most important thing, is that we are here together. I certainly want to wish everyone here, not only the women, powerful women, but also a couple of enlightened men who are here, part of the Women's Caucus. Happy Women's History Month. When I think of Women's History Month, I always think of my own mother, a single mother who, like so many, just got the job done, got done what needed to be done with a little bit of grit and a lot of grace, or a lot of grit and a little bit of grace. Whatever was called upon, she made it happen. And it was outstanding to see. I know our chair spoke to the picture that we saw behind our president, President Biden, last night, with our very own Vice President Kamala Harris and Speaker Nancy Pelosi. What a proud moment to see them both from California. I think whatever the president said, I think we can certainly applaud that. That's for sure. And I think it speaks to not only the phenomenal leadership here in California, but also the leadership within our party. I'm really incredibly proud of our own staff of the California Democratic Party, 65% women, and the only Latina executive director in the nation. And so I think that's something that we can continue to be incredibly proud of, because we've got some hard work, a lot of work to do in 2022. Republicans want to take away a woman's right to choose and damn near everybody's right to vote, except for the people that they want to vote, of course. They want to have a one-way conversation, but we're not going to let them do it. Despite our democracy and our democratic way of life being under attack, I know that we're going to come together in 2022 and win some House seats and keep that gavel in the hands of Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We're also going to elect women up and down the ballot, not only at the federal level, the state level, but at the local level, especially in red and purple parts of the state. So we're going to be called upon to do even more. We've been doing a lot for a long time. So many of you have been making it happen. We're going to be called upon to do more, to call more, to text more, to write more, to give more. And I know that we will absolutely do it. So I want to thank you for all that you do. thank you for all that you will do, and look forward to working alongside you in 2022 in order to make it happen. So thanks so much. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair Ruster Hicks. We certainly appreciate the time. I know you're running around because there's a lot of things going on to keep you busy, but we appreciate you and what you have to do, and we're ready to follow. I was glad that we did have the photo. We'll figure out what happened, but I don't know about you guys, but that photo last night was equal to a presidency. Those two women standing, our women, our California girls, standing behind the president, just was so heartwarming. Who would have thought, as they say, who would have thought? But it speaks to all the work that many of you do every day to ensure that we do have a peaceful and prosperous country. And we're going to fight and get back those voting rights. We're going to fight and get back our privilege to determine our choice. And that's why we have to have these meetings, even if they're virtual, to remind us of all the important work and the things we have to do. So I think at this time I want to set up the purpose or the theme for this meeting today. As I said, I know everyone here that's participating does a lot, but I wanted to particularly highlight some of the warrior princesses we have in this party that serve us on every day. And I don't know when they sleep, when you hear about them. I'm going to start introducing them, but we thought it was an excellent opportunity when we talk about justice. And as Rusty pointed out, maintain and try to keep the justice that we do have. So we decided that we wanted to honor, if we could, and everybody's on a different time schedule, especially with the Ukraine happening. But some of the people, the 5 people that stepped up away, that we wanted to recognize for the work they do were Representative Barbara Lee on health and reproductive justice, Lieutenant Governor Lenny Kounalakis on economic justice, Dr. Shirley Weber on voting rights justice, Senator Maria Elena DeRosso on district workers' rights justice, and our own Ann Lee, who's president of the CYD on youth. So if okay, I would like to start. Have there been any time changes? I guess I need to find out, but I think I see my my favorite lieutenant governor. So I'm going to start with her and give you a little about her, and then we're going to ask for some comments from her. Ambassador Eleni Kounalakis is a native Californian. She's the 50th Lieutenant Governor of California and the first woman. In addition to her duties as Lieutenant Governor, she's California's representative for international affairs and trade. She had a trade, she may talk us a little about that. She had a very successful trip not too long ago. She's also president of the Senate in case the votes of tie. There's a tie. She serves as a voting member on the Board of Regents of the University of California, Board of Trustees of the California State University System, and Board of Governors of the California Community Colleges System. Many people do not know that Eleni serves on and rotates our own state controller today, Betty Yee. I want to give a shout out to her. I saw she's in the audience, been a loyal Women's Caucus fan. As chair of the 3-member State Lands Commission, that's what they trade off on. She's also a member of the California Protection, voting member of the California Coastal Commission. And she also chairs the California Commission for Economic Development, which is a straight line into what I'd like her to talk a little about, which is economic justice in spite of COVID and what's happening to women and so forth. So we'd like to kind of hear her views, and maybe she might even give us an action item that we need to, a call to action we might need to do. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, Chair Fowler, It's wonderful to see you. Shout out to you and to your fabulous daughter, Dallas Fowler, who was my Southern California director when we did break that high, hard glass ceiling, and we did it together. So I am down in Fresno today, as you can see, and spent some time with the California National Guard. And just as a point, something many people don't know, but California has a relationship with Ukraine since 1993. We have been sharing through military exercises and expertise. We've had Californians on the ground in Ukraine since then, sometimes thousands at a time. And you can imagine how hard it is for those in the California National Guard who have personal relationships with those who are stepping up and fighting this fight. And it's all just absolutely terrible. But I do really just want to answer your question. When we think about economic justice in the state of California, what I think about through the lens of the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, as Chair Fowler mentioned, I serve on the Governor's Council of Economic Advisors. And in that position during COVID, have been able to be part of the conversation as to how we could use the budget tool, and I see Senator DeRosa on here as well, but how to use these massive budget surpluses to be able to ensure that those who are already barely keeping their head above water in our state have the resources that they need in order to be able to survive what was this very, very uneven economic crisis brought on by COVID. But I also want to talk very specifically about what I can do as Lieutenant Governor on the boards that I sit on. I sit on the board of the California Regions, the UC Regions. I sit on the board of the CSU Board of Trustees and the Community College Board. The Community College Board I only started sitting on when the governor bill putting the Lieutenant Governor on that board. So I'm the only person who sits on all three. We have about 2.8 million students in public higher education in the state of California, making sure that the pathway to a certificate or an advanced or to a college degree, making sure that that is accessible and affordable to our students is the most important thing that I feel that I get to work on every single day. There are a lot of things we're doing, but Chair Fowler, you asked for a call for action. I'm fighting tuition increases every day. Some people will say, well, okay, look, you can increase tuition and it will not affect everybody and that kind of thing. But the bottom line is, if we want to get back to the days when people like my dad, who started out as a farm worker and could go to Sac State, he paid $62 a semester, including books. That is what we're talking about when we're really talking about affordable higher education in this state and making sure that it is equitable and accessible and truly a tool for economic justice. I might also just note, we also did away with the SAT. And if you saw the numbers I saw about the inequity of the SAT, it would have stunned you, I'm sure, as it stunned me. At any rate, the UC has done away with that and brought in a whole new way of thinking about what it means for a student to be prepared to go to college or to go to a junior college and get a certificate. Okay, very quickly, housing. I'm very supportive of these housing bills that have been coming along to try to increase the amount of our housing stock. We have to build more housing in the state of California. We spent 18 years in this industry. We just don't build enough housing in our state, and it drives the prices up. So while I support the additional funding to build more affordable housing, the bottom line is that we just need to figure out how is this society, how is this state working with local government, how we're going to build more. What I can do as a member of the CSU and the UC, I voted to approve about 30,000 new beds total on all of these college campuses combined. So I spent a lot of time working through the boards that I sit on to be able to advance these goals I believe in. And certainly housing is a very big part of that. Finally, let me just say this, and I'm going to wrap it up. I could talk about healthcare. I could talk about so many other things, but let me just say this because I see that Dr. Shirley Weber is on here now, and she is an icon and a true leader. Even before the horrific murder of George Floyd, she was pushing and ensuring that her colleagues stood behind her to vote on bills that would lead the way in our state for real reform. Dr. Weber, was one of the great privileges of my first term to be able to sit and witness the signing of AB 392. And of course, this is really just the beginning with how much more we have to do. But the bottom line is that we can't really talk about economic equity and economic justice if our children don't feel that they are safe. And that, really was an incredible thing to be there with you and with members of your family and your friends to see the governor sign that and really set off what is a series of reforms that we need to keep going and ensure justice for all Californians. So one more real quick word. I am running for re-election. I cannot believe that it has been 3.5 years since I was pounding the pavement, asking for your votes. I was so proud to receive more than 1,000 votes at the California Democratic Party convention. I was a staffer for the CDP in 1992, a paid staffer. I love the California Democratic Party. I believe and have always believed in the power of California's grassroots to drive change, not just in our state, but across the country. We just heard from Speaker Pelosi, we know how much more work we have to do. And I would just like to really humbly ask for your support again this time. And I look forward to having 4 more years as your Lieutenant Governor to continue the important work that our state Democrats do, in particular, the women of the California Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. There a transition that almost comes naturally since you brought up Dr. Weber, but I'm going to take a little different tour though. First, I want to acknowledge, I believe I saw our Senate Pro Tem, Toni Atkins, in the audience. So I would certainly like to recognize and greet her. She's another warrior. She spoke to the caucus recently, and so we appreciate her still staying in line with us and keeping us on track. And we'll probably be doing likewise with some of these bills we're seeing lately. So Toni, you and I'll hook up. Dr. Weber, you are on next. I'm going to talk a little about you. Actually, Lieutenant Governor gave you such a warm welcome. I don't have that much to have to add to that. I think Dr. Weber's a household name in this state, but I'm going to still give her. She's in a new. So hailing from Hope, Arkansas, it's California's first Black Secretary of State. Her office really a lot. Not only people think of elections, but that's just one small piece, as she's probably found out by now. They also handle business, political campaigning, legislative advocacy. They have to keep up with our historical records. And she is the state's chief elections officer. And she's responsible for making sure that we're implementing electronic filing, internet disclosure campaigns, lobbyist financial information, operating safe at home confidential address program, maintaining the domestic partners and advanced health. So there are just so many pieces. Go to that website, you'll be surprised. On the Chair Directive Registry, safeguarding the state archives, and serving as a trustee, many people don't know, for the California Museum. Now, that would be the most interesting part of the job for me, Dr. Weber. But at this point, we know what you're known for the most. And so we're asking for you, and we're recognizing you for the work that you do in talking about voting rights justice and how that all ties in. And many of these things are interconnected. And so we'll give each of you a chance to talk about some of the other things as well. But at this point, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Shirley Weber, family.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm really pleased to be with you. I want to thank my Lieutenant Governor for her kind comments. She's a warrior and an amazing woman who is doing an amazing job. You know, we often think the lieutenant governor doesn't do a lot, but this one does, and which is indicative of what women do. You know, whatever position we take, we redefine it. We make sure that it functions well for us and for others, and she's doing that and doing a great job. I'm honored to be on this kind of panel discussion with such amazing individuals. Many of them I've worked with over the years with regards to the legislation that I've done, as well as the things I've done in San Diego to make a difference. Always pleased to see my pro tem with me who pulled me into the assembly and continues to pull and push me in different directions. And I appreciate her ongoing and strong support for me over the years. You know, it is, if someone had said to me, you know, growing up as a kid in South Central LA, and some of you know, we lived in the Pueblos, the Pueblo del Rio. We were the first families to move in those projects. And I went back to my elementary school the other day to see it still standing, and actually to see the house that we lived in still standing, which is amazing. But those Pueblos were built of brick. And I mean, all the walls were brick. And so they're still standing and in the conditions that they were before, which is pretty solid. But, you know, if someone had said to me, you know, when I was at UCLA or wherever, that we're going to be fighting for voting rights, you know, and then we're going to have to fight to maintain our voting rights, I would have said, nah, we've overcome that. You know, we've demonstrated to the world and the nation that voting is fundamental, that it is essential, and that we've passed the Jim Crow laws. We've gotten beyond that, and we realized that getting past that has really transformed the lives of those who were victims of the Jim Crow laws. My father and grandfather and all of those folks who had legal rights to vote, but yet had barriers in their way, not only just the laws that were barriers, but also the intimidation of life and death with regards to the ability to register and participate. So I never would have thought that at this time in my life, that I'd be involved with that particular issue. You know, I was in the assembly and as some of you know, doing some very important and courageous things with my colleagues in the assembly in terms of dealing with the issues that we had been facing for years with regards to police brutality and racial profiling and issues of poor kids not getting what they needed for education and all those kinds of things, and really cracking open some of the things that were important. And so when I was approached by the governor to be Secretary of State, I had to think hard and long about it, because I knew how to be a legislator and I knew what remained to be done. But I also recognized that in this very unique time, as I said to the press in December of 2020, when the governor mentioned my name, that these were difficult times and that our democracy was fragile. And the press didn't believe me. They asked me, what do you mean by that? And I had said, you know, I've seen this around the world. I've seen this in third world countries where there's an attempt to undermine the democracy, to undermine the fundamental principle of one person, one vote, to undermine the principle of a smooth transition of power. I've seen that. I saw it when I was once in Ghana, when someone tried to do it and the people of Ghana said, we are smarter than that. We're not going to have a coup where this president is not going to make us do things as he was trying to do things in the public. They said, we're going to vote and we're going to have a new president because we want to be like the United States. And it was interesting that this was what they were saying. This was the mantra, that we were their role model of what you do, that you have your differences, you have your issues, but in the end, you embrace the general principles of the democracy. You believe in the system and you realize that somehow or another it all works well for everyone. And I saw that this was crumbling and this was under attack. And I knew that somehow something was going to happen. And it was interesting to me after January 6th, I got calls from the press saying, you said our democracy was fragile. It is always fragile, because that's why you have to continue to fight against the forces that are out there to destroy it. And because it is dependent consistently upon the goodwill of people. It is dependent upon people wanting to do the right thing and the system working to make that happen. So we are now, so as I looked at what the challenge was, I thought, my God, I would not, you know, my parents were dealing with this battle, you know, years ago. My grandfather was dealing with this issue years ago, but I thought we had conquered it. I thought we had gotten to a different place. And now when I see what is happening across the nation with all the various laws and things that are out there to really undermine the democracy, to take away the power of the individual, the people's power. You know, the democracy says that one person gets one vote. It doesn't matter if you're lieutenant governor or secretary of state, or whether you're just a student walking across the university campus. You have the power of one vote, and all of those vote counts the same. And so it is really the issue that we face, so that is so critical. And so I've been working, my staff has been working very hard to try to educate people about what the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is about. We've had town halls across the state. We're continuing to have some, because people don't know what the battle was about. They've forgotten. And if you listen to what is happening with this so-called curriculum issue now, they want to erase all of those things out of our memory. They want to erase the history of the struggle to get to where we are. And some people think, well, it doesn't matter. And I said, but you don't understand that one of the first things you do when you take over a country, or when you engage in a revolution, is you rewrite history. You rewrite history. You rewrite what people know, so that they will not have a memory of their ancestors. They will not have a memory of their struggle. They will not know what they stand on. And so we're in the process in the Secretary of State's office of trying to help people understand what the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was, what it means to talk about voter suppression, what it means to talk about Jim Crow laws, and how these laws are very similar, and what it means when people do not have the right to vote and when others don't have anything to vote for. It is critically important that we get this message out. And so my team, we've expanded our outreach program. We've added additional persons to it. We kicked it off really in Fresno, because Fresno has issues with regards to registration and those kinds of things. And so we kicked it off in Fresno. We've had one here. We're having another one in LA in a couple of weeks. And up and down the state, we are basically having these town hall meetings that are broadcast so that people can understand, and have folks who've been involved in the struggle to come and talk about that struggle, because that is critical. And to hopefully incite others to understand just how significant this is. I mean, I continue to be appalled at the fact that we're kind of calm about all this stuff. And yet at some point, you know, Rome is burning and we're sitting around here very calm, playing the songs on the Titanic without realizing that we have something that we must do, and that we must do it quickly, because this election is coming up and it is very, very important. So I come to this work with an energy and a desire to make sure that we understand the importance of this democracy, that we understand the importance of what we have to do as Democrats, that we cannot be ho-hum about it, that these folks are serious about what they want to do. The bills that they have authored are unbelievable. They are bold enough to even put this stuff in writing, that they want to make it impossible for you to give a person a drink of water. They want to make sure you don't have voting after 12 o'clock on Sunday, because churches were getting buses to take people to vote. I mean, it just goes on and on. And so while we sit in California and we've passed AB 37, so we now have everyone with a ballot in their hand. We have many of our counties, over half of our counties will have 10 to 11 days to vote, because they have BCA counties. We have ballot boxes. We have opening voting on weekends, right before the election. We have made it very convenient. And we see that right now, 80% of our folks are voting, who are registered to vote, and over 80% of our folks who are eligible to vote are actually registered, and we're still registering those. We have opened up the franchise of voting so that anyone who is not sitting in a state or federal prison, who's a citizen, is eligible to vote. And that is unusual in many states, because many states have rules about whether you have a felony or you have this, or whether you paid your taxes and all kinds of things to keep people from voting. California's opened up the franchise and has made it possible for those to vote who are citizens in California. And as a result, we're out there registering and bringing in all that we can. So I just want to say that, this has been an amazing journey. One, I think that everyone has to get engaged in. I was meeting with some lawyers the other day, and they said I set them on fire because I chastised them. I said, you more than any group, it was women lawyers and Black lawyers. I said, you two more than any other group understand the system better than anybody, and you have not opened your mouth. You have not basically taken the challenge on to educate your population, to help your citizens understand the tremendous role that they play in terms of voting rights and what is happening legally across this nation. And they admitted, I said, so you're sitting here and the world we're burning, and you're here comfortably having a drink and some other kinds of relaxing experiences when you need to be organizing and meeting and sharing and making sure that women lawyers and that those who are African-American lawyers are helping people to understand how far we've come and yet what the journey is. And so I thank the governor for his faith in me to raise these issues. We've been working very hard in that, and obviously we're up for re-election. Fortunately, we don't have a Democratic opposition to me running, but we're still working hard because we want to have a great turnout. We want to make sure people know that even if they attempt to put barriers up, and there will be some things on the ballot with initiatives to try to, once again, make us like other states and take away our right to vote and take away all the things that we put together. We'll have some of those on the ballot and we'll fight against those. But we want to make sure that folks understand, and I say this to everyone as we go, as we're trying to help a lot of the candidates across the nation. I say to all of them, you know, the best thing that we're going to do in addition to get you information is we're going to insist that we have record turnout in voting. That no matter what they say, whether they're going to say you can't give somebody some water, whether you think you can't give them something to eat while they stand in line, we are going to vote in record numbers across this nation, because that will demonstrate to them very clearly that you can try to write these 300 and 400 laws. You can try to put people in place against us, but we're going to fight back. We're just like the folks in Ukraine. We're not going to just fold over and let it die. We're going to fight back. Because what we're fighting for is just as important what they're fighting for, if not more. And we are the leader. The rest of the world looks to us and wonders, is this democracy that great? If it is, you know, why are people so divided in the United States? We're going to fight this. We're going to fight it to every step of the way. And when I was in a rally in DC, I said to folks, you know, my staff and I are going to fight till hell freezes over. And then we'll put on our ice skates and fight some more. And someone said, what are you talking about? California doesn't have snow. I said, we're going to fight because California has everything. That's why we fight so hard to maintain California. We not only have sunshine, we got snow, we got rivers, we got lakes, we have mountains, we have deserts. California has it all. And that is one of the reasons why we fight so hard in California to maintain it. And that's why we become the leader across the nation. So I'm working not only with here in California, but I'm working across the nation with women groups across the nation, as well as with the secretaries of states and other states who are under attack, who are constantly under attack. We have many of our poll workers who are under attack. We're having to put them in our safe at home program because people are attacking our poll workers and saying to them and telling them that we know where you live kind of attitude. And so we're having to protect them. But I've committed myself, and so has our AG committed, that anyone who attacks and violates a poll worker or worker in our registrar of voters office, we will prosecute them to the full extent of the law. This will not be, as one of them said, oh, there are boys being boys. We've all been the victims of boys being boys before, and we will not tolerate it this time. So they understand I'm not having it, I'm not tolerating it, and we will prosecute them to the full extent of the law. If they attempt to shut down a registrar of voter office, they attempt to attack as they did one of our offices and hurt someone, we're going to make sure that they know that this is an offense, and we take it seriously. So I ask for your participation. We've got a lot of things happening. Look at our Registrar of Secretary of State's website. We ask for your engagement. This is a battle for the heart and democracy of this state and this nation. This is what we will give to our children. And I tell folks all the time that this battle that we've been on to get the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and beyond was a long, hard struggle that took the lives of many individuals. Medgar Evers and others lost their lives trying to register people to vote. And this journey up this hill has been hard and long and arduous. But I can tell you that any journey down the hill with simply a twist of a wrist or a slip is always fast, quick, and dangerous. And so we cannot allow ourselves to go backwards. We must continue to hold our pace and fight for this, what we know is our democracy. So I hope you join me in this as comrades in this struggle. Hopefully we get your support, not only for re-election, but equally important that we have voting turnout that says very clearly that we believe in the democracy and we're going to exercise it to the full extent that we can. Thank you so very much for all of your love and support. I appreciate you. And I hope you will join us always in this struggle. If you need any of the town halls or meetings or information in your areas, let us know, let my office know, let my folks in charge of outreach, Janelle Jackson, know, because we will be there for you with whatever you need to make sure that folks understand California stands strong and that we support people across the nation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. And I know everyone here does. And I think everybody got their marching orders. So if there was no other action item out of this tonight, you heard that from Dr. Shirley Weber, your Secretary of State, and one of our warriors for justice, definitely on voting rights. At this time, I would like to make sure that we get in a couple more. I know Representative Lee has joined us, but I'm going to switch to Senator Maria Elena DeRosso because some of the two items speakers we've had really speaks to a lot of legislation. Maria Elena was born to migrant parents and traveled throughout California and Oregon. She witnessed and experienced the exploited conditions and hardships that migrant workers suffered, and that led to her advocacy, really. And ever since I've known her for years, if you find a movement, she's there. She was the first woman secretary treasurer of LA County Federation of Labor. That's where I met her. I did know her former husband, Miguel. He was always doing the same, fighting on behalf of working people. So, ladies and gentlemen, please let me just make sure that we give a warm welcome to Senator Maria Elena DeRosso from the 24th District. But really, she works the whole state. Maria.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and Dr. Weber. You know, I think you're transforming the Secretary of State position to be something that is far more proactive, and greatly appreciate all that you're doing for all of us, especially our communities that, you know, are excluded. Voter suppression is the worst part. I remember in Orange County when, you know, those trying to suppress the vote of the Latino community were wearing the immigration, you know, uniforms to do that. So they're very disgusting things that are going on. Thank you so much. We're so lucky to have you. We're lucky to have a progressive attorney general, progressive lieutenant governor, our insurance commissioner, Lada. We have some really amazing leaders. So thank you all. And I do want to give a shout out also to our pro tem Senator Atkins, who's always taking a leadership role on all of our issues, and just especially on the issues that of working women. She has been so strong and so compassionate with my garment workers bill. She stood up and gave a very strong and somewhat emotional words about her mother being a garment worker, her mother being at that sewing machine, and why it was so important. And also was very strong on expanding our Medi-Cal to make sure that all Californians are covered. So really appreciate her leadership as our pro tem, but also as a woman. And I just want to mention, Caroline and everyone, some of the things that are really, we shouldn't even, I think, as you said, Dr. Weber, people ask about the right to vote. That should have been done past us, but workers' rights should also be something that we shouldn't be arguing about here, or even having to take the time to bring out. Can you imagine that tens of thousands of garment workers in Los Angeles, and we have to pass a bill to make sure that they get paid the minimum wage? That piece rate has been a part of the exploitive system in the garment industry for generations, that brand names and stores don't want to take responsibility for making sure that the primarily women were not getting paid for their work. And they control the amount of money that was paid. And they, you know, down the line, but they just wash their hands and say, not our problem. So this bill that we passed, SB 62, really was an extraordinary coalition. I just want to give that as an example of not only the women standing up and organizing over several years, but also organizing women garment business owners to step up and be right with them and saying, we want the women who work for us, talented, strong women, to get paid what they deserve. But these brand names and these companies, much bigger companies up the chain of supply, they don't want to pay what's fair. And so it was really an extraordinary coalition, women of color who own these businesses, standing next to garment workers, and together, creating the power that was needed to get the vote and to get the bill signed. And Governor Newsom signed that bill. Another bill on women's rights is, how about domestic workers having the right to a safe workplace? And that's a legacy that goes back to the days of slavery, when it was Black women who did everything in the home to help those families, to care the kids, clean the house, did whatever they were told. Today, there are still these laws, labor laws, that don't cover domestic workers. So we, move this bill forward. We took a big step to make sure that domestic workers will go from a voluntary working conditions, safe and healthy working conditions. We got to get to the point where it's a requirement, just like all labor laws. And we'll get there, but there are 300,000 domestic workers in California. Because of them, 2 million households, have someone to take care of those families, to take care of the homes, and allow, in many cases, the heads of the households to do their own careers, to carry on their careers. So we're going to keep on fighting on that level. And finally, I just want to say, we've got so many issues. A big shout out to the Women's Caucus also, because together with the Latino Caucus, the Women's Caucus, all our caucuses, we really do fight for the things that we need. This year, I'm trying to rectify a shortcoming in the paid family leave law, which pays only 60% of wages that are lost when you take paid family leave. By the way, that's where the workers put into it. Employers don't put into it. If you're making minimum wage at $15 an hour, and then you're saying, but take a leave to take care of your family at 60% of $15 an hour, there's no way. It's no wonder that low paid workers can't take paid family leave that they pay for. So we got to get that up to at least 90% of their wages is what should be paid. And then we'll start seeing some real equity in the Paid Family Leave Act. So there are others fighting for our childcare providers, not only that they get paid better, but also that allows more of our working class moms to be able to count on a stable place to take their children. Quality childcare will be provided. All these things, whether it's in the budget, whether it's in legislation, we're doing everything to close that wage gap for women, and especially women of color. We can't be in the bottom of the totem pole all the time. Women of color are just at the bottom of everybody. We gotta change that in a number of ways. Our appointments, our elections, and then finally, just want to mention all the work and kudos to the women legislators on the domestic violence protections that need to be in place. Far more attention has to be paid for that. So thank you so much. I could go on and all the different ways in which the Democratic women legislators are fighting for women, especially in the workplace. We've got to get up at the top where women belong in the workplace. So thank you all very much. And my also greetings to Miss Congresswoman Lee. Thank you so much for your role in our Capitol. Thank you, everybody. Gracias.
Thank you, Senator. And I have the next senator has a flight to catch, so I can't make her miss her flight. Diane Lee was elected the president of the California Young Dems, serving the first woman president in 10 years. She's immigrated from Vietnam, passion for democratic policy stems from a desire to provide opportunities for those who've been disenfranchised. We've asked her to, she's also development director at Emerge, which we all love and know. And I know several of my members on the board are with Emerge. She has been declared by us as the key person to handle and talk about youth and immigration justice. So Diane, you might want to give your closing remark in the same thing. The rest of you that have spoken, be thinking about what that might be. And then I'm going to wrap it up with Representative Lee, who always has some jewels of wisdom for us.
Thank you, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. My name is Diane. As Carolyn mentioned, I'm the current president of the California Young Democrats. And thank you to the former speaker, Senator Durazo, for mentioning that women of color are always at the bottom of the totem pole, because I know that very well as an immigrant myself. And I was asked to speak about youth and immigrant issues. For those of you who know me, I actually came to this country when I was 5, and members of my family came to America after the atrocities that occurred in the Vietnam War. So my heart really aches for the people of Ukraine, because I have seen firsthand how war has torn apart families and impacted children. And I never saw myself in a position like president of a statewide organization like CYD. That for me was something that was very unattainable for a long time. I didn't see that as a possibility because the odds have always been stacked against us, right? So we need policies to help us truly live out the American dream and not just be lip service. I'm a Democrat today because our party fights for equity and resources for disenfranchised communities. But even as President Biden said last night during the State of the Union, there's so much more work that needs to be done to help those in need. 22% of young people ages 14 to 24 are immigrants or live or have lived with at least one foreign-born parent. California is actually the largest share of these youth with 44%. And by 2050, immigrant youth are projected to make up a third of more than 100 million US youth. And my community, the API community, is the largest growing immigrant community in the United States. And that is something that should be more of a priority for the Democratic Party, since the API community is the largest growing immigrant community. We need to think about how more API people we register as Democrats, the more our party will grow and will continue to grow. We also need to consider the things that immigrant youth struggle with every day that we take for granted, and the issues that they go through. And these are things that like I said, I can mention I have firsthand experience in. Many low-income households of immigrants are less likely to be covered by health insurance. Something that I really struggled with growing up was assimilation and language acquisition. Many immigrant youths live in linguistically isolated households where we must act as translator for our families from a young age. Imagine needing to translate government documents to your parents when you haven't even reached puberty yet. I don't need to imagine that because that's exactly what happened to me. Over 90% of ESL fourth graders scored below proficient in reading in just 2019. The daily and ongoing stress and trauma of being bullied, feeling othered, feeling isolated, while also going through a loss of identity. So for me, growing up, I found a whole new family, a whole new community outside of the family that I already had. And it's really cheesy to say, but that was the Young Democrats. I was president of my California high school Democrats, my college Democrats, my young professionals chapter Democrats. And that really created this community for me of gaining the new family through an organization that helped me feel like I belonged. So fitting in starts first with feeling the need for survival, which for me was language acquisition. There's no better way to learn English than being bullied into learning English. And then it becomes competency, you know, being able to assimilate with all your other classmates, growing up with them, finally feeling like you're part of a team or a part of, you know, a group of people that you can finally call yourself an American. And then it finally, for some of us who really fight for it, transcends into leadership. And that's why I'm CYD president today, because I've always wanted to fight for people who are truly started out with nothing, you know, disenfranchised communities, like Carolyn said, for women, for LGBTQ plus people, for immigrants, for people of color, basically everyone that's not a straight white man. So when we think about when we think about what it means to be in this space, we also have to think about for some of us, there is a mirage of the American dream, pulling oneself up from one's bootstraps. And just because I, you know, was lucky, I had help along the way, I was successful, I am an outlier. There are so many other people who look like me, who have my background, that are not as fortunate. And that's something that we need to think about as leaders, as Democrats, and as people fighting for others. So that's what I came to say today.
Thank you so much, Diane. And as you'll see in the chat, if you didn't have a chance to look, people are we're all very proud of your leadership. We understand that particularly our dreamers, we just, if we say we're the big tent, we have to include everyone, and we have to continue to reach out and support them. So I want to wish you safe travels in case you have to leave right away. I understand. And thank you for sharing that important message for us. And so we do feel our youth are important here. That's going to be important for us to, as Dr. Weber said, get everybody out to vote. And we need you to do that. So thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And we continue to salute your work on youth and immigration justice.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, and we're going to come back around, so you guys remember to have your little closing comments, and it could be a call to action. You know, Women's Caucus takes those seriously. So Congresswoman Barbara Lee represents the Bay Area's 13th Congressional District. She serves as co-chair of the Pro-Choice Caucus and co-chair of the Asian Pacific American Caucus Health Task Force. She is a member of the House Appropriations Committee and chair of the Subcommittee on Tate and Foreign Operations. She also serves as chair of Speaker Pelosi's Task Force on Poverty and Opportunity. She is the highest ranking Black woman in the United States Congress. And if there was any question about that, now you know, you should have asked. So with that, Representative Lee, we thank you for joining us. Please share your pearls of wisdom with us and all the good work you've been doing. And we are trying to recognize her for her work in health and reproductive justice specifically. Thank you, please.
Thank you, Carolyn. Let me tell you, I've just been enjoying listening to my California sisters. I got on when our Secretary of State was on, then listening to Senator Durazo, and then to Diane Lee. You guys are inspiring me. I'm here in DC dealing with all these national security issues, and my subcommittee that I chair of the Appropriations Committee has a lot of authority and jurisdiction over the funding for everything that's non-defense in the world. And so, you know, I'm thick into it with Ukraine, and we were in Germany at the Munich Summit, Security Summit, and also London. And so it's been quite a pressure cooker, but we've got to save our democracy. And what Putin is doing is trying to establish, once again, authoritarian regimes throughout the world. And we cannot forget that this is a global effort to erode democracy, and no country is left without that movement. As we know here in the United States, when you look at what happened January 6th, the peaceful transfer of power was almost thwarted. And when you look at the misinformation, disinformation, voter suppression, all of the issues that our Secretary of State talked about and what's going on throughout the country, this is part of that global effort to suppress and to set up a new form, an autocracy in America. And we can't let that happen. So don't think this is just Ukraine. This is a global effort. And when I was in Munich, it was very clear that our European allies are exactly where we are on what Putin is doing. And so it's nice to be home virtually with you. And I want to thank all of our CADEM women. You all keep me going here in DC. I am so inspired to see so many of you, and I hope everybody is well, healthy, and safe during this very challenging moment in our history. And Carolyn, I want to thank you for your tremendous leadership, for that wonderful introduction, and for your steadiness on so many issues, especially now with our Women's Caucus. And the theme, Women in Justice in Challenging Times, this is so timely because it has been difficult for women and girls, especially with these unprecedented Republican attacks on women's reproductive health. And so I'm so proud of Californians because we have the right to privacy in our Constitution. But look at what's happening in Mexico. Look at what's happening in Texas. Look at what's happening with the Supreme Court. A decision that could begin to erode or end Roe versus Wade. I mean, women's reproductive justice, reproductive freedom, really right now is very fragile. And let me just say, for those who have, issues around just talking about abortion, please understand this is about a woman making her own decision about what she wants to do with her body. Period. ... It doesn't matter if you want or not want to have an abortion. It's not my business. It's not any elected official's business. It's no one's business but yourself. And so that's what this is about. And I just have to say, I shared my story, and it was, I've never talked about the abortion I had because it's so private and I didn't want anyone to know. And my mother and I said, it's nobody's darn business. And so I never shared it, and the stigma and the trauma and all. But, I decided after the Mississippi case and the Texas case, I testified at a hearing with Pramila Jayapal and Cori Bush. I was 15 years old in California. This was before Roe versus Wade, and I got pregnant. And my mother and I, we talked about the pros and cons, what we wanted to do. It was a terrible moment for me not knowing what to do. But I decided, that I would have an abortion, and my mother supported that. But you know what? I had to go back to Texas. I was born and raised in El Paso. A friend of my mother's took me to Juarez, Mexico to have a back alley abortion. And I survived, but there was so many women then that didn't survive. The cause of death of the majority of African-American women during that period before Roe versus Wade was septic abortions. And so this is a really horrible moment, and we can't allow any court, any elected body to take us back to the days that I know so well. And so many of our young people don't even know those days because it's always been their decision, their choice, and their ability to control and determine their own healthcare. So just know, as co-chair of the Pro-Choice Caucus, keeps me up at night. And it keeps me working really hard to protect the right to privacy and the right to make your own reproductive health decisions. And so we've got to pass the Women's Health Protection Act, which our beloved, great Congresswoman Judy Chu, who chairs the Asian Pacific American Caucus, she got that bill through the House of Representatives, had been working on it since 2013. It's in the Senate now, and of course the senators it's hard for me to fathom why they won't vote to send this bill to the president's desk, because this is about women's rights and women's freedom and women's reproductive justice. And believe you me, the Senate can move this bill, which would codify Roe versus Wade. That's what it would do. It would just make it the law of the land, period, ... And we have senators who won't even vote for that. So we have a lot of political work to do also, because this is such a political struggle. And we know that if the Texas law is upheld in Mississippi, we know it's going to be low-income women, women of color who don't have the money to travel to, say, California to have an abortion. We know that. So once again, it's going to impact disproportionately low-income women and women of color. Also, I serve on the Labor, Health, and Human Services Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee. And let me tell you, the Hyde Amendment we repealed. I have legislation some of you know about called the EACH Act, which would repeal the discriminatory Hyde Amendment, which denies women of color, low-income women, access to the full range of reproductive health care, including abortion care, because it won't allow for Medicaid to pay for those abortions. And let me tell you, this has been on the books. It's been the law since 1976, since I've worked for our beloved Congressman Ron Dellums. I remember Henry Hyde when he did this, and I couldn't believe it in the 70s. So we finally, in the appropriations bill, we repealed that in the House. We repealed the Helms Amendment. And now, of course, where is it? It's in the Senate, both of these repeals, and who knows, but we're fighting really hard to make sure that somehow the Mexico City language that is the sort of like the global Hyde Amendment, that these provisions prevail. But we have an uphill battle in the Senate, but at least we got them through the House. And I'm sharing this because if we wouldn't be able to do any of this if it weren't for the fact that Speaker Pelosi is a great woman who knows the issues and is leading on so many issues and taking our Democratic caucus in the country to places where we should have been years and years ago. So I have to salute Speaker Pelosi, because we couldn't have done any of this had it not been for her support. And speaking of that, parenthetically, I just want to say to you that I was part of her delegation to Munich, to the Munich Security Conference. Not only is she a national leader working for the people in our state and nationally here, but she is a well-respected international global leader who heads of state come to for advice, for counsel, for leadership. And so I hope you all understand what not only a treasure we have here in our own country, but throughout the world, because people respect and want to know Nancy Pelosi's thoughts, her advice, and how she can help lead on the diplomatic front to secure for global peace and security. And so just know that it's a privilege to work with her so closely, because I see her on these international stages, and you would be so proud. And finally, just a piece of good news, Chairwoman Fowler, let me just tell you now, my coin legislation, I don't know if you all have heard about the women's coin bill that I worked on for 7 years. Well, we finally will have women on our quarters beginning in February. The first quarter, the first woman on a quarter in our currency was Maya Angelou, Dr. Maya Angelou, okay? Now this month, and this is something that I worked with Rosie Rios, who was the US Treasurer, who came to my office, and we started planning this. Well, this was like 8 years ago now. And Rosie's leadership was tremendous at helping us get this legislation passed, which was my legislation. But now in circulation, we will also have Sally Ride, who was the first American woman in space. We have Wilma Mankiller, who was the first woman elected as the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. We have Nina Otero Warren, who is a voting rights activist and the first woman superintendent of public schools in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we have Anna Mae Wong, who was one of the first Chinese American Hollywood actors. And so I'm sharing this with you because this coin program, we've never had women on our currency before. Now we will. And it's not just about symbolism, but it's about their stories. It's about who they were. And it's about giving our young people the inspiration and the hope and the knowledge that they too can be what they want to be. But all of these women not only soared for themselves, but they did it for the country and for their communities and for women in general. So their stories, if you don't know these women, get to know them. And we'll be rolling out, I think, 5 every year until 2025. So try to get your quarters, okay, because they're beautiful quarters. And I'm really proud that it was my legislation. And Nancy Pelosi helped me develop the strategy to get it done. And it wouldn't have been done had it not been for Nancy. But we got it done. So get your quarters with our phenomenal women on them. Thank you again.
I do see the chair of the Legislative Caucus. Am I right, Christina Garcia?
Yes.
Do you want to say a few words? They have to unmute you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate it. It's good to see Ms. Lee and Ms. Weber here today. I apologize. I was on a flight earlier, so I couldn't get here sooner. But I'm excited to be here. An update on the Women's Caucus. We are at 37 caucus members. 39 has been the most we ever had, but we had a couple of members leave us midterm. And so we are working to replace that and expect that in April, we're gonna have Lori Wilson join us to the caucus. She is running unopposed for a seat in Northern California. Excited to have her join us. We are working and we have endorsed over 20 women for different seats in the state legislature right now. Many of them are women of color. We do not have a single Democratic API woman in the Women's Caucus, and so that's a priority. We have way too few African-American women running, who are elected, and so we have a few more running out there, including Lori Wilson, and so working to grow those caucuses, that part of our caucus as well, and excited for the opportunity. 2022 has turned into a year of a lot of turnover in the legislature, but it means a lot of opportunity for the Women's Caucus out there. And so we are excited to put our full weight of our caucus to grow the caucus and get a little bit closer to parity out there. And so I want to thank groups like the Women's Caucus. You have been doing the work to ensure that we have a qualified farm out there. And it's been great to see all these great women stepping up to the plate and running for us. The Women's Caucus is working on various legislations, but I want to talk about our reproductive freedom package that we announced with the anniversary of Roe versus Wade out there. And so here in California, we made it clear that we are going to be a beacon of hope. We are going to be a place where women can come from anywhere in the US as our freedoms are under attack in many states out there. But the reality is that as we welcome women or individuals from across the US who are needing help and access to abortions, we also lack access here in our own communities out there. And so we introduced a package of bills that is going to be spearheaded by the Women's Caucus, in addition to a budget ask out there that we have, which includes things like protecting providers who provide abortions to patients coming from other states out there. We are creating a website through the state so that when you come here knowing exactly where you're going to go and the resources that are available to you. That we're going to be creating a nonprofit with that so that we could take private dollars so that we could also help offset the cost from coming from another state into California for resources out there. I myself, I'm working on a bill to create a pilot program for counties to direct funds directly to community health clinics so that we can improve reproductive health and access in underserved communities like mine out there as well. We have bills to protect data as well. We have monies and bills to ensure that we have providers for all of this. We expect there to be a 3,000% increase in needs for providers out there to provide abortions and access to reproductive health care. And so we are stepping up for that as well. And so I just wanted to give everyone an update about what the Women's Caucus is up to. And just thank you, Carolyn, and your board for all the leadership. I know I went over a minute, but I appreciate the time.
But it was good information, and so they know to follow you. We're doing pretty good on following legislation lately. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to say, I heard Representative Lee, did you want to close us out?
Well, I'll just say once again, it's really great to be with everyone and on to victory. This year, we've got to make sure that we keep the House of Representatives, make sure we grow the House of Representatives with our candidates. And I know in California, women are going to show out once again. Also, the Senate and anything that our office or any of us can do to help with that. Myself on our campaign, we are there to. Team Lee is there to work with the California Democratic Party to ensure major victories this coming November. And finally, just going back to my thoughts about reproductive justice, which I failed to remind us of, but Shirley Chisholm, first African-American woman elected to Congress, who was my mentor. She was one of the first board members on NARAL's board. She was a woman who was fiercely pro-choice. And so I'm thinking of her today because then it was really not very popular for a Black woman to be involved in the pro-choice movement, but Shirley Chisholm did. So let's lift her up in March also when we think about reproductive justice and reproductive freedom. So thank you all again.
With that, I hope you've enjoyed all of the great information you received. We had some wonderful talent, women challenging justice on a daily basis. We love you all. Again, you can join the Women's Caucus to stay abreast of all this different information. And we love you. And to show that we do, I'm going to close it out and dedicate this final song to all of you. And let's win. Let's continue to win in 2022. Thank you so much. We love you.